Hi, everybody. Welcome to Soundtrack, a live queer oral history project sponsored by the UBC Equity and Inclusion Office. I'm your host, Michael V. Smith, coming to you from the beautiful unceded territory of the Syilx Okanagan people. Each week, we welcome a special guest and feature a new album as the prompt for the soundtrack of our lives. I'm very excited. The album this week comes from Canada's darling, Jane Siberry, with No Borders Here. And to tell us where she was when is the amazing writer, interdisciplinary artist, and Kwantlen University prof, Nicola Harwood. Hi, Nicola. Welcome to Soundtrack.
Hi, everybody. Thank you.
Yay. Okay, Nicola, we're going to flip the gay toonie. Do you want to see who goes first? Do you want queens or bears?
Queens.
Queens, and it is bears.
Okay.
I go first. So I always title my story poem off the album. So this is called No Borders Here. I have two key timelines for this album. One captures my first visit to Dee's house. We were 13, a full decade before Dee came out as trans. Both of us still pretending to be the boys everyone wanted us to be. When she pulled out this record from a stack saying, "You have to listen to this." Everything about that visit was intimidating. Her family had a bedroom nobody slept in. It was just for guests. A tan leather couch they called a love seat, a shiny black piano, in the basement, a drum kit, and an area with cardboard for breakdancing. Dee even taught me some moves. And in the far corner, a photography darkroom. I was even gobsmacked by the album itself. I'd never bought a record. Dee had enough money to buy an album just for her, a stack of them. It had never occurred to me you could buy your own music. My naive blue-collar ass was learning how other people lived. Rich people, I would have said then, though they were really only middle class. Sitting on that leather love seat, hanging out with a doctor's kid, I felt like my life was expanding. So fast forward 4 years to Dee and I at 17, still listening to Jane Siberry, slowly confessing our mutual love in veiled language. I think I feel a kind of love for you like Darren, the homo who was out in school. Oh yeah, I think I do too. At the same time that Dee started dating one of my best women friends. On our days off, Dee and I talked music, lots and lots of conversations about Siberry songs. Dancing class was about a lesbian love affair, right? Mimi on the Beach, a Fuck the Norm core anthem. So much so that we developed a coded references to songs for communicating when friends were around. I love you, or I'm feeling super fucking jealous of my other best friend who is sitting next to you up front in the station wagon holding your hand, or let's try penetration again tonight. Teenage stuff. When you're a 17-year-old suicidal fag in a mill-working family, the sissy who could never do anything right, in love for the first time with your best friend who you swap blowjobs with for 3 hours every night, but who is dating you in secret while also dating your best friend, Siberry's "You Don't Need" is obvious shorthand. I think it is the hardest when I see you look at her in a way I thought was only meant for me, inspired by me. I made a lot of compromises to be in love that first time. I spent a lot of lunch hours exhausted trying to find places to hide from my friends, which weren't the drama room where we all hid from the rest of the school, so I could cry and gnash my teeth and try to get my shit together so nobody could tell I was tormented inside of a love I had to share in some cheesy after-school special bi-teen love triangle. But I still remember the thrill of Dee that first time holding out Siberry's album cover in the space between our bodies. What I didn't yet know would be the soundtrack to my first queer kiss on the lips of that young person right there, grinning at the joy of introducing me to something new. That's my poem. Okay, Nicola, over to you.
Fabulous. Thank you, Michael. That was wonderful.
Thanks.
Okay. I don't have a title here, but Here's the snowbank, taller than us, past midnight, kicking and sliding through slush in skinny red leather boots nobody should wear in this climate. You wearing hand-sewn leopard skin pants and a thin black leather jacket. We reached the tall house on the corner, Dave's place. Low rent, low heat, rolls of drawings, paintings, garbage, art. Carpet shag maroon and crusty, maybe a nubby old light blue armchair from the 50s, a broken wooden chair from the alley. Almond eyes and black hair with cheekbones, the stuff of story. You're so queer and I want to fuck you. But you are a boy and I am a girl. We smoke a lot of cigarettes and a lot of pot. You toss your backpack on the floor, all you brought north from San Francisco. Reach in and drag out something white. I don't think there are any lights on in Dave's apartment. Maybe something in the kitchen. It feels dark, and you climb into the white thing and it materializes in front of me. A full-length white lace skirt, scalloped and wide like a wedding dress. Now you are wearing this on the bottom and your leather jacket on the top. You reach into the backpack again, and now you are applying wine red lipstick. You pull the hem of the white dress to your face and press your lips against it. Then you lean over and kiss me. There are no borders here. We shave our heads, somewhat male, somewhat female, but so not either. It's 1983 and we are queer oddlings in love. We're not quite at home inside or outside of the queer community. There are still borders there. Years later, after we broke up, I wore your leopard skin pants and leather jacket. When I missed you, I would push the armpits of the jacket against my face to breathe in your scent. I took up with women. Last week, you sent me a recent picture. We're in our 60s now, but there you are in a stylish gray dress and black tights. Your hair still close to the skull, cheekbones still legendary, lips red. There are no borders here.
Oh, that's gorgeous. I love
Thank you.
that. I love that. I'm amazed that you're still in touch with that person.
I have a weird kind of, I think it's kind of a queer thing, you know, a lot of serial monogamy, but this intense long-term loyalty to all my exes. So there's really, I'd say probably 90% of all my lovers I'm still close with.
Wow. Well,
Yeah,
I think that's a really healthy sign. Like,
yeah,
if you want somebody in your life to be a partner, why do they disappear just because you don't want them to be a lover anymore?
yeah.
That is Dana. It's not a secret. Everybody knows. It's in my memoir. Dana and I met when we were 12 and came out together, and then Dana came out as trans again, and it's really like family, right? You have someone in your life for 30, 40 years, they become that's chosen family.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So did your person end up turning queer? Is that?
Well, you know, they had a really interesting trajectory of being, I'd say, highly femininely gendered and yet attracted to women. And only recently in the last year decided to transition.
Wow, amazing.
Yeah, all
that
those
late
years.
in life.
And all those years kind of negotiating being in straight community too, like not really, yeah. So in some ways I went into queer community more so. So yeah, along an interesting trajectory of, for sure, how we negotiate gender and sexuality when people want to align those things. You know, you're either in the queer community or outside the queer community, and lots of people just it doesn't fit that box. You know, I didn't fit that box when I was younger. Yeah.
Well, I think my sense is that things are getting a lot blurrier, right? In the best way.
It's a huge relief. Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember being in my 20s in, the early 90s, and you had to pick something. You couldn't be
Yes.
bisexual.
Yeah.
There was no real thing as pansexual. Like people who said pansexual, you're like, what, you're into nymphs in the woods or something? Like people didn't know what it was.
Yeah.
And the whole gendered thing, you were either a boy or a girl, a man or a woman, or you
Yeah.
were trans, and that was like a third category, and it was and there were arguments about what kind of person you could be as a trans person.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I find it, and I think that slowed us down. Like I feel like it slowed me down. Let's make it a personal statement. Like I think if I was a 20-year-old living now, I'd be living a very different life. I'd be
Yeah.
wearing more makeup and wearing dresses. And I think I sort of got more comfortable in my masculinity, and it just became easier. And I'm living in that. So anyways, whatever, it's complicated.
And they were, you know, this actually took place in Nelson. So this was a rural environment that I did my coming out in. And we had quite a large queer community for such a small community, small town. We had a lot of dances and events and stuff. So when I think about the reality of, you know, you could be gay, but you had to not put it out there in the 80s. You had to kind of keep it. You certainly weren't allowed to be explicit. And I think for folks who were differently gendered, it was highly dangerous during that time. And, you know, we were all aware of that. So that the emerging of flexibility within a stigmatized minority community really only can take place once there's some stability of that's been built, you know, by the liberation movements and by more and more people becoming visible and coming out. That creates the stability that then affords flexibility. You know, people were surviving.
Yeah, I
in
remember.
lots and lots of ways.
What makes me think about how polite you had to be. Like there was all the idea of respectability politics, right?
Yes, yes.
And how that tension. I remember going to Pride in the 90s in Toronto, and you would see people who show up to Pride wearing super queer outfits because they were celebrating, you know, their bodies and their sexuality and their desire, and
Yeah.
people showing up in suits and ties, and you could see the tension between those two because you wanted to be nice, you wanted to be polite.
We had one guy try. He was gay. He was trying to shut down. I was part of the Lesbian Avengers in Victoria. We were organizing Pride in the early 90s, early mid 90s. He tried to get the license taken away from us because he was very threatened by how, because we'd go topless and we were very out there and sort of, you know, viewed as radical. And he was very threatened by that because his idea was that we need to be accepted. We need to work to become an acceptable member of the community. You know, and the last time I did the Victoria Pride Parade, we were holding up some signs in our car that was saying something, fuck this, something, I don't know, it was something a little rude. And some family in front of the Parliament buildings were like, we brought our children, they were giving us shit. And I'm like, oh my God, really? You know, that this is, so the families who came to the Pride Parade thinking that it was something that they should bring their children to were shocked at the queer people expressing themselves in the parade. You know, just like, well, you know.
It's the same thing with dating. Like I learned this about dating, that if you tried to adapt, if I tried to be less queer in order to find a boyfriend, I always attracted people who weren't attracted to me. They were attracted to this thing that I was trying to be.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's the same with the queer community. The more you try to assimilate, the more you try for a kind of respectability politics, the more you're creating a world that isn't the one you actually are or want to live in, right? You're creating a sanitized version of whatever it is.
Yeah.
You just
and
need
it's huge, the political energy that has gone toward assimilation versus, you know, but I mean, it's always interesting. It's like the various prongs of liberation. Some folks are assimilationists, some folks are the rebellious activist radicals. And it sort of is all of that that moves the narrative forward and transforms the worldview of the mainstream culture. But I was always very rebellious against assimilationist activism, like marriage and stuff like that. I was like, we fought against that, you know, before I came out. Why would I want to do it now? You know, and yet for some folks, that was a very important piece of their journey. And so, you know, all the actions toward shifting things. But I know I had a recent conversation, actually, Jody, you were a part of this conversation. We talked about what we missed about, you know, subcultural days when we were more, you know,
dark and dirty,
oppressed.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy, but there was hangouts, and there were clubs, and there were places where we created space that had a kind of intensity and beauty to them because they were against the law. You know, the law being the worldview and approval of the society. And there's something pretty lovely about that does,
and it was
it changes, right? It's always different.
It was such a microculture. Like, I remember going to bars, and each bar really had its own distinctive flavor. It was like going into, I guess the comparable for young people today is like when you're on an app, you have your little bio saying what you're looking for. Well, you used to go to the bar to find the thing you were looking for because the bars had those flavors. There's still a bit of that in the leather community, you know, the leather bar, but it felt like they were such microcosms of permissibility, of permission.
Yeah.
And I miss that. I miss going to radical queer events where people got naked, had sex in the corners, did, you know, whatever they wanted to do, or didn't, or, you know, kept their clothes on and danced in the middle of the room. Like, I miss all of the thrill of that.
Yeah. And of course, you and I had very different experiences. I mean, we're a little bit different in age, but also I ended up in more lesbian community, and you in more gay male community, you know, and so that was, you know, whole different worlds going on there as well, in terms of microcosms. Yeah.
Yeah, this also reminds me of Bobby Noble's idea of how you read. Do you know this idea about being read? Like, that whiteness gives you a kind of legibility, or it gives you a kind of coherence. The richer you are, the whiter you are, the more you make sense. So he's got this story of being a trans man in a small town, and he gets caught out by a cop for whatever reason. He gets pulled over, and he has an F on his driver's license. And because he's a trans man who's white and is driving a certain car and dressed a certain way, the cop just thinks the F is a mistake. So his whiteness and his class allow him to pass and not get questioned. So he was safer in that.
Yes.
It makes me think about that, right? There's a like, we see with Pride Toronto in the last few years that the Black Lives Matter movement is having all this pushback because of respectability politics. It's just taken on a new look. It's not about sexuality anymore, or bodies. It's about the color of your skin and trying to be nice and kind and polite. And you're not supposed to disrupt. It's like, well, that's not queer. If it's not disrupting, then it isn't queer. And I love that. I love how Bobby Noble sort of unpacks all of that for us in such a neat way.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you know, that's our 20 minutes. Isn't that amazing?
I knew it was going to go very quickly, and it's been a lovely, lovely chat. Yeah.
Nicola, I just think the world of you. I'm so glad you were on the show. Thanks for joining us and sharing your amazing reflections on No Borders here. Can we give Nicola a warm thank you of applause?
Thanks, everybody.
If you haven't already, check out our Facebook event page or the Soundtrack group for more info on Nicola. Those bios posted there. Buy her books, write her fan mail, invite her to read in your town, teach her work in your classes. I want to thank again the UBC Equity and Inclusion Office for sponsoring this event. We've got a new title card, so fancy, and the Inspired Word Cafe for helping to get the word out. We'll see everybody next week. We're sending out a big mwah.